For 25 years, the people of Onitsha called her Ifeoma the snake behind closed doors, and sometimes not even behind closed doors. She was the woman who had crept into Chief Anyanwu's life when his wife was still warm in her grave, or so the story went. She was the reason, they whispered, that his children learned to distrust every smile aimed at their father's money. Nobody asked Ifeoma her side. Nobody ever does in stories like this. Chief Anyanwu died on a Tuesday in March, quietly, in his sleep, the way rich men are supposed to die when they've made peace with God, or at least made peace with their lawyer. The whole of Odwaku district came out for the wake-keeping. Women in white and black wrappers wailed under canopies. Men shook hands and murmured about a life well spent. And in the front row, dry-eyed and composed in navy blue, sat the 3 children of the house. Chidima, the eldest, a lawyer with a courtroom voice and a heart she kept locked away for use only in emergencies. Obina, the only son, a man whose business ventures had failed so many times that his father's name was the only collateral he had left. And Uzoma, the last child, 26 years old, the one everyone forgot to watch closely, which was always a mistake. 3 rows back, alone in a plain grey dress with no gele, sat Ifeoma, 61 years old, straight spine, eyes forward. She had not been seated with the family. Nobody had thought to ask her. The will was read 11 days later in Barrister Nnamdi Okonji's office on Old Market Road, with the ceiling fan clicking overhead like it too was counting down to something. To my children, Chidema, Obina, and Uzoma, the barrister read, adjusting his glasses, I leave the family compound at Fege and 30% shareholding in Anyanwu Trading Company to be divided equally. Chidema's jaw tightened. Obina leaned forward like the numbers might change if he stared hard enough. To Mrs. Ifeoma Chukuma, I leave 70% shareholding in Anyanwu Trading Company and full ownership of the Upper Iweka warehouse property. The silence that followed had weight. You could have built a house on it. 70%? Obina's voice cracked. 70 to this woman my father was sleeping with? Ifeoma in the corner did not flinch. She had expected the accusation. She had lived inside it for 25 years already. One more day wouldn't kill her. I was never his mistress, she said quietly. I think it's time you all knew that. But I won't be the one to tell you why he did this. That's not mine to give you. She stood, gathered her handbag, and left the office without another word, which, if you know anything about how people behave when they're hiding shame, told you everything and nothing at once. Chidima wanted to contest the will immediately. She had the legal standing, the fury, and, most dangerously, the certainty. We drag her to court, we expose whatever scheme she ran on Papa, and we take back what's ours, she told her siblings, pacing her Lagos office in her heels, still in her work suit from a case she hadn't finished. Obina agreed before she'd even finished the sentence. He needed that 30% to become 70 and fast. His last supplier had already threatened to seize his warehouse stock over unpaid invoices. Only Uzoma hesitated. Before we destroy a 61-year-old woman's name in front of the whole of Onitsha, maybe we should find out why Papa did it. He wasn't a foolish man. Careless with money may be near the end, but not foolish. You are always soft for the wrong people, Obina snapped. But Uzoma had a key that her siblings didn't know about, the key to the old storage room behind their father's Fege office, where 3 decades of ledgers, receipts, and yellowing files sat untouched since before she was born. She found it on the 4th night, past midnight, dust in her lungs and cobwebs in her hair, a ledger from 1994, water damage at the corners, in her father's young handwriting. Loan received from engineer Chukuma Eze, 2.4 million naira to save Anyanwu Trading from bankruptcy following Aba warehouse fire. Terms: repayment within 3 years at agreed interest. Chukuma Eze, Ifeoma's husband. Uzoma sat on the dusty floor for a long time with that ledger in her lap, doing the math her father clearly never finished doing before. 2.4 million naira in 1994 wasn't just money, it was survival, it was everything. She dug further, court filings, a failed business, Eze import-export, dissolved in 1997. A man who died in 2003 in a rented two-room flat in Fege, of what the death certificate listed simply as complications from untreated hypertension, the kind of death that happens to men who have run out of both money and hope. There was no record of the loan ever being repaid, not 1 naira. Chief Anyanwu had taken the money that saved his empire from a widow's dead husband and let that husband die poor while the Anyanwu family compound grew a second story, then a third. Uzoma brought the ledger to her siblings and to Ifeoma herself in a meeting none of them wanted, but all of them needed. He never told you, Ifeoma said, staring at the faded ink like it was a photograph of her husband's face. 25 years and he never once said thank you to my face. He'd greet me at church functions like a stranger. I thought, her voice caught, just once before she steadied it. I thought maybe he'd simply forgotten. Rich men forget poor men's kindness quickly. Then why leave you 70%? Chidera asked, and for the first time, her courtroom voice had gone soft with something like shame. Because dying men remember what living men bury. He couldn't say sorry to my husband's grave, so he said it to me in the only language your father ever really spoke, money, quietly, where nobody could ask him to explain himself. Obina, who had spent the last 2 weeks calling this woman a snake to anyone who would listen, said nothing at all. There are silences that are worse than any apology. It was Chidima, the lawyer, the one who understood exactly what a settlement could buy, came to Ifeoma 3 days later with the offer. A public statement clearing her name, an acknowledgement, quiet but real, that she'd been wronged, and a settlement, 25%, still more than fair by any normal measure, still generous, but far short of what the will actually said. You'd be doing us all a favor, Chidima said. The community would finally understand, you would walk with your head high, and the company survives without losing the majority to someone outside the family. Everyone wins. Everyone except the truth, Ifeoma said. She thought about it for 3 days. She thought about her husband's unmarked grave in a corner of Ozuoba Cemetery that nobody visited but her. She thought about 25 years of being called a snake in a marketplace her husband had once dreamed of dominating. She thought about what it would mean to stand in front of the whole of Onitsha and say, he owed us, he let my husband die owing us, and he only paid me back because he was afraid to meet God still holding the debt. And she thought about what that truth would do to 3 children who had already lost their father and were now watching his name cuddle in front of them. On the 4th day, she signed the settlement, 25%, no public statement, no press. She asked only one thing that wasn't in the paperwork, that the Anyanwu family finally, quietly pay for a proper headstone on Chukwuma Eze's grave, the kind he should have had for the man who saved a company that never once said his name out loud again. They agreed. It was done. In silence, the way Chief Anyanwu had always preferred his debts settled. Some people will tell you, Ifeoma won. She got her name back quietly and a stone over her husband's grave that finally spells his name in marble instead of memory. Others will tell you she lost. She had the truth in her hands, a truth that could have burned down 25 years of whispered lies in one afternoon, and she chose silence instead. She let the man who wronged her husband keep his good name in death, the same good name he'd protected his whole life at her expense. Which one was it? Grace, or one debt paid for with another? The Anyanwu family got to keep their father's memory clean. Ifeoma got to finally rest her husband properly. And somewhere between those two kinds of peace, the full truth of what Chief Anyanwu did and didn't do for 25 years is buried with him. What would you have done in Ifeora's place? Taken the quiet payout or burned the truth into the open?